One Sunday in 1851, in London, a 15-year-old girl called Eliza Crouch was waiting to be picked up from church by a maid to be accompanied back to her family home, but was left standing alone on the pavement, seemingly forgotten. She accepted the offer of an older man who approached her on the street, offering his help. Instead of a short journey across the city, instead, the stranger, who claimed to be a diamond merchant called Saunders, took her to a less than salubrious smoky pub, where he brought her cakes to eat and alcohol to drink, and she passed out, ultimately leading to the man raping Eliza, who was a virgin. When she woke up, she made the disturbing discovery that she was in a strange bed with Saunders getting dressed next to it. He asked if she wanted to stay with him, and when she refused, he left, giving her a £5 note, more money than she had ever seen. Knowing it was impossible to go back to her old life in her now ruined state, she decided to enter the world's oldest profession. Years later, she confided that the encounter left her with an intrinsic horror of men. It would lead years later to becoming one of Paris's most sought-after and successful courtesans, and a near-fatal shooting that led to a scandal that left her in society's shadows. Eliza Crouch was born in Plymouth on the south coast of England in December 1836. Her father was the cellist and composer Frederick Crouch, who married her mother, the contralto Lydia, in 1832. By April 1841, Crouch had returned to London, leaving his wife and daughters behind in Plymouth. In 1843, he bigamously married Elizabeth George and had 2 more children, creating his own scandal, and the couple went on to have 2 children. 6 years later, he left for the United States, leaving both wives and families behind, and was said to have married 3 more times. With young children to care for, Eliza's mother developed a relationship with Richard Litley, who was considered to be a stepfather by her children, who didn't take to him at all. Her mother sent her to a convent boarding school in Boulogne, where she learned to speak French fluently, returning to live in London in 1850, moving in with her grandmother, Anna Watts, so as to avoid her stepfather at all costs. Not soon after was the fateful encounter with Saunders that would change her life. Far from being helpless, she did not return to her mother's or grandmother's, instead embracing the idea of independence. With the £5, she rented a room in Covent Garden and bought some new clothes. Now on her own, she soon made the acquaintance of Robert Bignell, proprietor of a notorious pleasure establishment, the Argyle Rooms, which offered the combination of a bar, a dance hall, and women available for hire. Bignell fell madly in love with her, but the feeling wasn't mutual. He was simply a generous means to an end. Eliza soon left Covent Garden and moved in with Bignell and became his mistress. Looking at the reality of life around her, she quickly realized that the life of a common prostitute was a tragic one, with the best result being that a woman could end up poor and degraded, and the worst being a future that held disease and death. She concluded that in order to practice this trade, there had to be higher expectations, with the goal of becoming the kept woman of select dedicated lovers with the financial means to keep her in luxury. Her involvement with Bignell lasted for some time, with the two eventually travelling to Paris, posing as a married couple. After a month of dining, dancing, and touring the sights, she became so enamoured with the city that she insisted that Bignell return to London without her, determined to remain in the French capital, which was her new fixation. In order to live up to her new life, She adopted the name Cora Pearl, chosen to resonate with the new identity and future. She liked the idea of being a gem on a strand of lovers. Cora began working and selling sex under her new name, making a connection with a procurer known as Monsieur Rubis, a man in good standing with Parisian high society. Prostitution was legal in France, and he became her agent, introducing her to the type of affluent customers she'd been waiting for. He set up Cora in a nicer neighborhood and more suitable accommodation, taught her the rudiments of the business, and, of course, helped to expand her repertoire of specialty skills. She worked with him for 6 years. Her first lover of distinction was 25-year-old Victor Massenet, the wealthy 5th Duke of Rivoli, whom she called one of the first links in my chain of gold. He was thoughtful and anxious to please her. Even though he was jealous of other lovers, he lavished her with designer clothes and jewelry, and paid for her living expenses for 6 years. Massenet put Cora on the map, so to speak, and she used his money wisely to stay there. He provided her with funds for gambling when she visited the casinos and racecourses in the fashionable resort of Baden in Germany, buying her the first horse Pearl ever owned, the first of many that she eventually did, becoming an accomplished horsewoman. It was said she was kinder to her horses than her lovers. Her liaison with Massenet would last for 5 years, while simultaneously sharing her favours with Prince Akil Murat. By 1860, Pearl was one of the more celebrated courtesans in Paris. She made time for anyone who could afford her company. William, Prince of Orange, and heir to the throne of the Netherlands, once paid 5,000 francs for one night with her and gave her a priceless necklace of black pearls, which she never tired of showing off. She was the mistress of notable aristocrats, Duke de Gramont, Cadarus, and more significantly, Charles, Duke de Mornay, who was the half-brother of Emperor Napoleon III. He generously contributed to the life Pearl demanded. He was rude and really disliked, but Cora insisted he was an angel to those who pleased him. He was besotted with her, and even though he had a wife, he had jealous fits about her other lovers. Cora would never belong to any one man, but it was in her best interest to keep this prince happy. Whenever Prince Napoleon felt like Cora wasn't giving him enough attention, he sulked and threatened to deport her. She had to make up excuses when she wanted to see other clients, but he gave her a hefty allowance of 12,000 francs a month, bought her 2 fabulous houses, and made her one of the wealthiest women in France. They had met in 1868, when he was 42, and their liaison lasted 9 years, the longest in Pearl's career. In 1864, Cora rented a chateau in the Loire region, known as the Chateau de Beausejour. The place was a luxurious and expensively decorated residence, with stained glass windows and immaculately maintained interiors and grounds. Her boudoir had a custom-made bronze bath, monogrammed with her initials, intertwined in gold. The chateau was used for gala entertainments, and there were rarely fewer than 15 guests at the dinner table, with the chef instructed to spare no cost on the expenditure for food. Pearl was known for devising entertainments of an unexpected and outrageous theatricality, of which she invariably was the star attraction. On one such evening, she dared the group assembled around the dinner table to cut into the next dish, about to be served. The meal's next course was Cora herself, presented lying naked on a huge silver platter, garnished with parsley, and carried in by 4 footmen. For Pearl, money was for spending, accumulating the luxuries of life, and buying her way to a coveted perch in the upper echelons of society. Her jewel collection alone was valued at 1 million francs. At one point, she owned 3 homes, and her clothing was made for her by top Paris couturiers. As her career prospered, the gifts from her suitors needed to be both costly and imaginative. She pitted her admirers against one another, raising the price of her favors as the games among competitors escalated. In her heyday, she was able to command as high a price as 10,000 francs for an evening's entertainment. She was known for dressing creatively with the intention of provoking or shocking, and her affinity for dyeing her hair bold colors. She was once seen riding in a carriage, her hair the color of a lemon, dyed to match the carriage's yellow satin interior. In another instance, recognized for her bold outfits, she even dyed her dog's fur blue to match one of her dresses. She was never more popular than she was during the last half of the 1860s, and she was living it up like there was no tomorrow. She had a brilliant sense of humor and knew how to make bored men laugh. It set her apart from the competition. The more money she made, the more she had to spend. Wealthy patrons wanted their mistresses to be status symbols, not secrets. To this end, Cora began taking rides to the Bois de Boulogne in her magnificent open carriage in order to show off her assets, both material and physical. In no time, all the courtesans were parading their goods, and respectable high society got into the habit too. It was a great way for her to drum up business. She was so in demand that she'd fully turned the tables on her wealthy clients. Now it was her suitors who felt they needed to stand out in order to retain her affections. Gifts became more extravagant and imaginative than ever. Someone sent her a box of candied chestnuts, each one wrapped in 1,000-franc note. Another gave her a book, also with 1,000-franc notes in between every page. It was said that she was earning 50,000 a month. To manage her business, Cora kept a ledger where she wrote down the names of her clients, the dates of their appointments, and how much she earned for her services. Someone once caught a glimpse of the open book and noticed she also kept a column for special notes. Not all of her gentlemen callers got a 5-star rating, and the reasons why fitted neatly in the margins. When she was 37 in 1872, but pretending to be 30, Cora became involved in a relationship that resulted in the decline of her success and fortune, having become embroiled in a relationship with the wealthy Alexandre Duval, 10 years her junior, and heir to his family's restaurant fortune, whose obsession for her was so intense that he spent the entirety of his money on sustaining his liaison with her, giving her jewels, fine horses, and money. Even so, Cora ultimately tired of him when his money ran out, a finality that Duval could not accept. Having made several attempts to see Cora, on December the 19th, 1872, he went to her home, it is believed, with the intention of killing her. After pacing up and down for hours in front of her house, he forced his way through the front door. He confronted her with a gun that he had brought with him, which went off accidentally in the ensuing struggle, wounding him near fatally. Even though he was severely injured and initially near death, he eventually recovered. But the consequences of the event proved disastrous for Cora's reputation. Society clearly wanted her to be the villain, and Duval got all the sympathy. People blamed Cora for causing the ruin of yet another upstanding citizen. The inevitable scandal, not helped by gossip that Cora initially ignored him while he lay bleeding, encouraged the authorities to order her out of the country, leading to her expulsion from Paris to first London and later Monaco and Nice. Her Paris home was sold in Rue Charlot to cover expenses. It marked the beginning of a rapid decline in her wealth and social standing. beginning a downhill slide from which she would never really recover. In May 1877, she sold some of her most valuable possessions at an auction, but the amount raised was only enough to pay off her debts. She downsized to a smaller apartment where she continued seeing clients, but they were hardly the type she was used to. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870 brought at its end a new French Republic. The battle was short-lived, with Napoleon Bonaparte surrendering on September the 1st. The ensuing siege of Paris by the Prussians on September the 19th began with little warning. Cora just had enough time to get 8 of her beloved horses out of the city. A truce in January the following year set the Parisians free. Now the decadence of the Second Empire was a cause for much resentment. While others received honours for their sacrifices, all Cora got was dirty looks, as there were changes and a shift in French society. The era in which Pearl had achieved her greatest success was over, seeing a decline in aristocratic privilege and a resurgence of conservative values. Cora was no longer able to attract the titled men who had been her prime clients. Like the rest of the imperial family, Prince Napoleon was living in exile. He wrote to her often from Florence, and in early 1871 they arranged a reunion in London, her first trip back to England in 20 years. She booked a suite at the Grosvenor Hotel, but she didn't exactly get a warm welcome. When the manager recognized her, he threw her out without returning her booking deposit. By 1874, her long tenure as the mistress of Prince Napoleon, her longest relationship, ended at his request. He wrote her a touching, carefully worded letter of regret. He could no longer sustain the emotional and professional toll the relationship required of him. He had continued to send her what money he could, but with his own finances dwindling, he ended their relationship for good. Cora was eventually able to return to Paris, but she was in debt up to the hilt. Something had to be done. She was slowly forced to liquidate the fortune she had accumulated. While not destitute, her financial situation had become dire, and by 1883 she had returned to common prostitution, taking an apartment above the shop of a coach builder on the Avenue Champs-Élysées, where she received clients. In July 1885, she was forced to sell her chateau in the Loire. Her reduced finances did not inhibit her passion for gambling. Habitually committed to playing for large stakes, she is restricted to betting modest sums. The book Memoir de Cora Pearl had been greatly anticipated when it became known that she was writing her autobiography, which was published in 1886 in Paris and subsequently in England. Cora claimed to have sent relevant pages to her former lovers, offering to anonymize their names if they paid her. In the end, most names were altered, but the anonymized figures of many have since been identified. Soon after the publication of her life's experiences, Cora became seriously ill with intestinal cancer and died on the 8th of July 1886 at the age of 51, just 4 months after her book was published, with obituary notices appearing in the London and Paris papers. Her remaining possessions were disposed of in a 2-day sale 3 months later. She was buried in Batignolles Cemetery in a grave leased for 5 years. After those had elapsed, her remains were removed to an ossuary and the grave reused. Cora, during her visit to London in the 1870s, was famously turned away, despite having a reservation and deposit paid by the manager of the Grosvenor Hotel, as her reputation had preceded her and humiliatingly thrown out. In 2012, after renovations, the hotel unveiled a Cora Pearl suite, which could be the ultimate in making amends to a jilted customer. It features decor inspired by the opulent French interior styling of the late 19th century, with glass chandeliers, feather-trimmed lamps, and a raised marble bathtub. There is even a painting of Cora over the bed, looking decidedly not scandalous. If that's not enough, you can go to the hotel's reunion bar, where they have created a Tears of Cora Pearl cocktail